Hello everyone, this is Undiga, the Niger fertility lawyer. I thought it would be a good idea to start this channel by explaining some very commonly used terms in infertility or in fertility law and practice. I think the first place to start would be to say, why would you even need to talk to someone like me? And why would you need to go to a fertility doctor? The reason why is because you have been unable or are having some problems achieving a pregnancy or conception naturally, usually after about between 6 and 9 months, depending on the age of the mother. And you will go in to see a fertility doctor, and some tests and examinations will be done. And then the doctor will come up with an explanation for why he thinks the conception is not happening naturally. That's the starting point. That is what we call a fertility diagnosis, an explanation given by a medical doctor as to the reasons why conception or pregnancy are not happening naturally. That is what we call a fertility diagnosis. And on the back of a fertility diagnosis, the doctor will come up with a treatment plan. Basically, one or a number of things that he's recommending that you would do that will enable you to achieve a pregnancy. And that fertility plan is something, fertility treatment plan is something that your fertility lawyer will be very interested in finding out about. Now, that fertility treatment plan will include whether or not you would need to do IVF, or whether or not you would need a surrogacy, or whether or not you would need to use donor egg or donor sperm. All these things are what we call a fertility treatment plan. And these fertility treatment plans have different legal implications. But we'll start by describing what the elements of a treatment plan really mean. So let's start with IVF, in vitro fertilization. In vitro fertilization basically means that the intending mother is given some medical treatment that will enable her produce good quality eggs that can be used in the treatment. And that treatment will also enable her womb to be optimally prepared to receive a fertilized egg. So the intending mother will have some treatment, an egg will be retrieved, or a number of eggs will be retrieved from the intending mother, and sperm will also be retrieved from the intending father, and the egg and sperm will be used in the lab to create an embryo, which is basically a fertilized egg. And then the fertilized egg will be transferred back into the womb or the uterus of the intending mother. That is typically what we call one cycle of in vitro fertilization. The treatment of the mother to retrieve the eggs, to prepare the womb, to prepare the embryo after being a sperm being retrieved from the father, and then on a special day called the embryo transfer day, you're not very unlikely to miss it. This embryo is transferred into the womb of the intending mother or into the womb of the surrogate. That's what we call in vitro fertilization, so which is basically that the embryo is created outside the body of the mother, unlike what happens during natural conception. So the egg and the sperm are used to create an embryo outside the body of the woman, and then is transferred into the woman's body. That is typically what is called one cycle of IVF. Now, there are times when the doctor will say, oh, we don't know why conception is not happening. There's nothing wrong with your womb. There's nothing wrong with your ovaries. You're producing good quality eggs. Your husband or your partner or your spouse is producing good quality sperm. And we're going to try and just give you some help by giving you some fertility treatment, some hormonal treatments, and to also create the embryo outside the body. And in a straightforward case of IVF, it will be the intending mother who carries the pregnancy by herself, using her own eggs and her spouse's or her partner or her husband's own sperm. And in that case, the child to be born will be genetically the child of the intending mother and intending father. That's a simple, straightforward case of IVF. But in some cases, the doctor would have said that there might be some explanations, some infertility factors that might be on the side of the mother or the side of the father. Now, if these explanations or infertility factors are related to the intending mother, we call them female infertility factors. But if they're related to the intending father, we call them male infertility factors. Now, if for instance, there is a male infertility factor, which happens about 30% of the time, if there's a problem with the quality of the sperm, in some cases, the intending father may have problems with the quality of the sperm, or sometimes the sperm are completely absent. Yes, it happens occasionally, unfortunately. If there is a problem with the quality of the sperm, sometimes sperm samples will be taken and the best sperm will be chosen for the treatment. But however, if you have a case of what doctors call azoospermia, in which case there are no sperm at all, if the intending parents agree, the doctor may recommend that donor sperm will be used, in which case another man's sperm will be used to create the embryo that will be transferred into the woman's womb. And that is a case of what we call sperm donation. And sperm donation is only indicated where the intending father has either very few good quality sperm that are incapable of supporting a pregnancy, or the intending father has no sperm at all. And that is when, on the basis of that fertility diagnosis, the treatment plan of sperm donation might be recommended by the doctor. In other cases, the problem or the explanation for why conception is not happening might be on the side of the mother, a female infertility factor. And sometimes these factors might have to do with the ovaries. Now, the ovaries are the organ of the body that produce the eggs. Sometimes the ovaries are not functioning properly. Sometimes, because of the advanced age of the mother, she might not be able to produce any eggs or any good quality eggs that can be used for the treatment. In such a case, the doctor may recommend that an egg donor, the eggs of another woman, an egg donor be used for the treatment. In other cases, the ovaries might be fine. They may be producing good quality eggs, but there might be something that has to do with the womb, something that impairs the intending mother's capacity to carry a pregnancy. And one of the most common examples are fibroids, which are benign, non-cancerous growths that go and sit somewhere in the womb and interfere with the woman's ability to conceive. Now, if the intending mother has uterine factors, which means that she's incapable of achieving a pregnancy unassisted, or which is incapable of achieving a pregnancy on her own, the doctor may recommend that she uses another woman carries the pregnancy for her using her own eggs and her husband's sperm. And that woman who is brought in to carry the pregnancy on behalf of this couple is called a surrogate. And surrogacy is only recommended when there is a very good reason why the intending mother cannot carry a pregnancy. Usually that there's something wrong with her womb, or she may have an existing medical condition that makes it dangerous for her to carry a pregnancy. Sometimes a woman might have sickle cell anemia, or a very bad case of high blood pressure, or other medical conditions that a doctor thinks that is not advisable for her to try and carry a pregnancy. And in that case, the doctor would recommend that a surrogate be used. So there you have the female ovarian factors, which have to do with the ability to produce eggs. You have the female uterine factors, which have to do with the ability to carry the pregnancy. And then you have the male factors, which have to do with the ability to produce sperm. And in some cases also, a man may be able to produce sperm, but there is a problem with being able to get the sperm out to where they need to go. And in some cases, there are some artificial means whereby a doctor may be able to go in and retrieve the sperm by himself instead of relying on the natural delivery mechanism. And so this is a general overview of the reasons why you would need to consider fertility treatments and what they mean. So we've talked about IVF, we've talked about egg donation, we've talked about sperm donation, we've also talked about surrogacy. And these different things are elements of what we call a treatment plan. Now, these treatment plans have different legal implications, which we will talk about shortly. But first of all, I'd like to talk about international surrogacy. Now, international surrogacy is a case where the intending parents live in one country and then they go to another country where you have where the surrogate lives, where the fertility clinics are, and they have the treatment in that country. And after the birth of the child is taken out of the treatment country and back to the destination or residence country to live. So in international surrogacy, you have the engagement of the legal systems of two countries. First of all, you have the treatment country, and I specialize in handling cases where the treatment country is Nigeria. The treatment country is a country where the surrogate lives, and is the treatment, the legal system of the treatment country determines a lot of important factors. The treatment country is a country where most of the documentation is produced, where the fertility clinic is located. If there's a surrogacy agency involved, the surrogacy agency will be located in the treatment country. And it's a treatment country that determines who the legal parents of the child will be at birth and the processes required, if necessary, to change the legal parentage of that child. And on the other hand, you have the destination or the resident country, the country where the intending parents live. And it's the destination country that determines the documentation and the processes that will be required to bring that surrogate born or donor conceived child back into the country where they would live with their intending parents. So there are two different countries, and international surrogacy involves an engagement in the legal systems of two different countries whose legal requirements may not be exactly the same. And when an intending parent or parents leave the country where they live and go somewhere else to have their fertility treatment or have a surrogacy, they need to be aware from the very beginning of what the legal implications of that treatment will be. They need to ask for some very specific questions before they start their treatment, starting with the country where they live. What are the requirements they need to satisfy to be able to sponsor a surrogate born or a donor conceived child's entry back into the country after the treatment? As some of these requirements might be mandatory and some of them might be discretionary, there might be some wiggle room for you to get around them. You need to find out whether or not you qualify either to get citizenship of that country if you are a citizen of that country, or whether or not you qualify, or the treatment, if you follow the particular treatment plan that has been recommended, if that child will qualify for either a passport or a visa to go back into your country of residence. You need to find answers to those questions before you even start. I would even recommend that once you get a treatment plan, once you've got a fertility diagnosis and the doctor says, we think we should do egg donation, or we should do sperm donation, or we should do a surrogacy, you need to find out at that point, before you start the treatment, from a fertility lawyer with experience in international surrogacy from your home country about the requirements you need to satisfy if you follow that particular treatment plan. You also need to get legal advice from the lawyers in the treatment country, Nigeria. You need to find out who will be the legal mother, the legal father of the child at birth. And if you are not the legal mother or father of the child at birth, how will you acquire legal parenthood over that child? And what documents can be produced from Nigeria? And whether or not they satisfy the requirements of the country that you're going to be able to sponsor that child's removal from Nigeria and entry into the country of your residence. These are very important questions that you should ask before you start. Now, the advantage that some parents think they have is because they are Nigerian by descent. They were born in Nigeria, they have family, they have friends in Nigeria, and it makes them feel a bit more comfortable about coming to Nigeria to have their surrogacy or their fertility treatment. But very often you should remember that the fact that you are Nigerian does not necessarily mean that you will acquire parenthood over that child if that child is donor conceived or surrogate born in Nigeria. So it's a very good idea to get legal advice from both countries before you start the treatment. So in this video, what we talked about was what a fertility diagnosis is, the different kinds of fertility diagnosis that you can have, the different treatment plans that can be recommended by a doctor. We also talked about the fundamentals of international surrogacy and some of the things that you need to take into consideration before you embark on international surrogacy, particularly if you're considering coming to Nigeria for your international surrogacy treatment. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to hearing from you. This is Undiga, the Niger Fertility.